I think it ties in with kind of one of my mantras, which is just you are a scientist. And I believe
Yes.
everybody is a scientist. For me, it's an empowering way to be able to showcase that science isn't this far fetched field that's way beyond your intellect or way beyond your comprehension or ability to achieve, that you are making scientific discoveries in every single thing that you do, every single day to day observation that you make. You are conducting science because science is simply just understanding how the world works.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Sean Trey Show. I have a really awesome guest with me today. Now, would you like to tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, yes. Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Maynard Okereke. Some people may know me as the Hip Hop MD with my platform, Hip Hop Science. I have a background in civil environmental engineering, but I work now as a science communicator. I make educational science content on social media. So you may have seen some of my random, quirky, funny science videos on TikTok or Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, really merging the worlds of entertainment, pop culture, and science together and using them as tools to help educate.
That's awesome. And it's like it's huge because we are in this time period where stuff is so accessible. I remember I was a science nerd and I loved it.
Mhm.
I was super into movie Space Camp, but my
Yeah.
school didn't have a lot of stuff for us to look at, and to see. And so
Mhm.
when I was trying to find knowledge, I had to go to the local library, and they had some books, and the books weren't that fun. And so, luckily, I had a great teacher who was able to steer me in the right direction. But now, I mean, the stuff is everywhere, and it's so easy for kids to get access to this. And
Yeah.
for us all to be like, think scientifically. But that leads me to like one of the things that you had is like to think like a scientist. Now, what does it mean to think like a scientist, and how can anyone build that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it ties in with kind of one of my mantras, which is just you are a scientist. And I believe
Yes.
everybody is a scientist. For me, it's an empowering way to be able to showcase that science isn't this far fetched field that's way beyond your intellect or way beyond your comprehension or ability to achieve, that you are making scientific discoveries in every single thing that you do, every single day to day observation that you make. You are conducting science because science is simply just understanding how the world works. And so when we talk about thinking like a scientist, that just means thinking critically. That means thinking beyond what's just on the surface layer, beyond what's just what you see, right? It's diving a little deeper. It's asking more questions and more questions. And then when you get some of those results, then going even deeper and asking more questions and tying that into other aspects of life. Could be nature, could be your own physiology, your own biology, space exploration, making connections now to other things and seeing how there might be synergies in other areas or seeing how there might be other connections that might translate into other things that you may have never thought about before. And so when we talk about thinking like a scientist, it's really being able to think critically and then start making connections to things that you may have not thought would have connections before, and then being able to see what the results could be from that. And then even diving further, connecting with other people, building community, asking questions with experts, engaging with experts and people that know more than you do so that you have a better understanding of kind of all these factors that go into play when it comes to whatever observation or whatever project you might be working on. And so for me, it's the combination of both knowing and being empowered that you are a scientist in every single thing that you do, and then also being able to think critically and expand beyond what's just right in front of you.
I love that. When you were talking to Ilani and I didn't respond to it. And I was waiting to. Like, there was something that you said that I absolutely love too. That in the conversation with Ilani earlier for Ilani's little world, you mentioned like pushing someone into a swimming pool. And
Yeah.
it's like it's really funny because I can sit there and see and I know Ilani's later on gonna. She was sleepy, but I know she's gonna come back and go, hang on. So do we have to test that again and again and again? So like I push someone into a pool, they're going to get wet. And
Uh-huh.
is it going to happen every single time? Is there a chance that at one time you push someone into the pool that it might not happen? And so it's like you got to go at it. And we take a lot of things for granted, but the reality is that the early scientists didn't. They sat there and said, all right, well, maybe there's going to be one time that we push someone in and it doesn't. They don't get wet. Or maybe we've got a special suit that we've built Like think about the first dry suits that they built so people could go diving into colder temperatures.
Yep.
Are they going to get wet when we push them in? Hopefully not, because we created this dry suit so that they wouldn't. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because we live in a world that is lately all hasn't necessarily strived toward truth. And we should be,
Yeah.
because the scientific method, scientific thinking is all about seeking out the truth. It's thinking about, what is real? Is this going to, when I pour this in here, going to be something true? And, or is it true for now? Is this our hypothesis able to be proven? Instead
Yeah.
of, because everyone walks around with opinions, but the reality is behind your opinions, there should be scientific fact. There should be something more objective. Let me
Hmm.
ask you though, why is scientific thinking more important now than ever before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties in with the last part that you stated, which is being able to now seek the truth. And I think what's happened is as information and things have become more accessible to everyday person, right? We now want to seek things that reinforce what we already know or what we hope to be the outcome or what we project to be the outcome rather than what is. And I think that's one of the reasons, and you could tie that back into government. You could tie that back into things like vaccines and the pandemic and, all a litany of other things that affect humanity, right? That we now want to be able to push a certain narrative around rather than actually going to what the science says and what the hard facts say and what the experiments and the tests and the results and the data and years and years of practice from scientists that have been working hard in the trenches, in the fields,
Right.
doing this work, right? And so right now, I think that information is more important than ever, and it just comes with this kind of scientific literacy. And I think that's one of the things that's lacking right now is just general science literacy. And you can hark back to education and going back to elementary school and like for you, you're doing amazing work right now with your daughter, being able to engage her with just the scientific discourse, right, by doing these podcasts and these educational lessons. And she's now starting to think like a scientist. She's now starting to incorporate scientific terminology and starting to ask questions and make observations and going through the whole scientific method, right? You engage your daughter now, so now she can be able to think critically, and that will stick with her. And a lot,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we've lacked that a lot in education, just from a lot of disparities in education, the access, especially for our youth and underserved communities and underprivileged communities, have lacked that greatly. And so that affects us as we continue to go down, into leadership positions and into jobs positions and candidacies and whatnot. Is that lack of science literacy and that lack of being able to think critically and being able to look at the data and being able to follow that data rather than just what we want to believe or what we think is possible or what we think should be the right outcome. And so right now, that science literacy is so important. That kind of goes through the whole timeline from adults, kids, and high schoolers, whatever age group you can be in. That science literacy is really important, really key. And even right now, I talk about the role of science communicators, whether it's through social media or through media outlets and journals and papers. That science communication is key because that's now that transition of being able to take some of that complex data and that complex information that scientists may be working on and making it palatable for the general public so that people understand how science work, why things change, and why we navigate the way that we do. And I think that communication is really key. Just like in any relationship, you want to be able to communicate and articulate your points and articulate why things are happening and why things are progressing so that everybody's on the same page and has a general understanding. And so science communication goes hand in hand with that. And I think that's for me why I'm really passionate about doing this work is I get a chance to be able to educate and be able to provide people with proper information and perspectives that they may have never thought about before.
I love that. And I love it. And I love like another thing too. Man, there's so much to talk about here. The other
Yeah.
day, I was talking to Kevin J. DeBruin about some movies that he liked, and he mentioned
Mhm.
October Sky. But before
Yeah.
October Sky, my daughter and I had actually watched Hidden Figures, and
Hmm.
she was having a hard time with math class, and I was like, "You want to talk about math? Let's talk about math." Because she's like, "My math is so boring. Math can't do anything." And I was like, let's watch a movie. And we watched the movie Hidden Figures. And when she watched that movie, she was just like, she's like, why is everyone being so awful? Why are these people this lady, she's the smartest person in the room. And I said, but, and I explained, I explained that the prejudice that was happening at that time. I explained a lot of the challenges that were happening at that time with racism and such. And my daughter's like, mind was blown that people were acting like that and that was going on. And and what she saw, and she looked at me, she's like, science gave her power. And I said, yes, it did. It's that knowledge. And she's like, they were being horrible to her. They were making her drink from a different coffee pot. But the science gave her power to stand up and said, when they saw that this was the smartest person in the room, they had to pay attention because that knowledge changed the game. And that knowledge, and so, and it leads me to another question, like, your what is your journey like breaking into science communication and bringing more representation to this field? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. For me, it's really completely rooted in representation and wanting to be included and wanting to just simply be respected and understood. Because foundationally, I went through a lot of different turmoils, whether it be lack of representation, prejudices that I encountered all the way from elementary school through college and in my professional work environment as well too. And for me, what always kept me rooted was just my natural love and curiosity for science. I just loved learning. I
I love
loved
it.
asking questions. I loved exploring, and science was always innate in me. That was something that was just fueled within me. But it took me having to overcome a lot to stick with it. And there's so many circumstances where I could have been pushed out, pushed away, and
Yeah.
not continue to participate in science because of circumstances around me. But I was so passionate and I loved it, and I wanted to achieve ultimate greatness in it. And I remember even going back to college. When I originally went to college, I wanted to actually study wildlife biology. And I've told this story a lot of times in some of my speaking engagements. I was a nature nerd. I used to love going outside and exploring just wildlife and ecosystems. And so I got to school and I wanted to study wildlife biology. I love National Geographic. I wanted to be on a research team in the jungle,
That's awesome.
working with animals. Like that was my dream. And I got talked out of it by educators, counselors. They're like, no, you shouldn't do wildlife biology. One, there's no money in there, and you won't be able to find success in there. And early on, I was like, okay, maybe just maybe I was thinking wrong. This wasn't the right field for me. And then coming back full circle, I realized that not was it just about, we didn't think that there would be opportunities for you to find financial success in there. It was also because there was a lack of representation. There wasn't anybody that they'd
Yeah.
seen that looked like me who had achieved success in that field where they can be like, oh, that's someone that looks like you that you could aspire to be, or an example of someone doing that work in that field. There was nobody that looked like me. There was not anybody on television, on a National Geographic, or on any other platforms that had visibility that looked like me, whose path could be emulated, whose path could be someone that they can copy and be able to be like, hey, I want to be like that person. And I encountered so much of that just by not having a lack of people that were involved in STEM that looked like me. And so I ended up going an engineering route and then faced more prejudices while I was in the professional work environment of being undermined or people not believing that I was an actual engineer or that I was a lead on a project and not giving me the credibility or they're not feeling like I had the credibility in the position that I was in. And so a lot of that is shaped my understanding and shaped my perspective of what I do now with my platform. And for me, that's why I'm so passionate about kind of merging these worlds of entertainment, pop culture, and science together. Because a lot of it is how I wish I'd been taught when I was in school. And I know a
Right.
lot of kids right now get pushed away or don't feel science speaks to them. And they want there's nothing wrong with wanting to be an athlete or a celebrity or an artist. Like these are all amazing fields. But you can always be both. You can
Right.
thrive to be an athlete or a successful artist and still have a love for science. Still want to ask questions and understand how the natural world works and how engineering functions and all these other elements of science. And a lot of times kids are pushed into these boxes where like, oh, I can only do this or I can only be one thing or the other. And I like to be able to showcase that you can be multi-talented, you could be multifaceted, you could have different ambitions and a love for a wide variety variety of different things. And for me, I think that's important because now it gives us a chance to be able to think broadly and be able to think about how these fields connect and how different things shape our perspectives. And now we can start getting people that aren't traditionally represented in a lot of these fields feel like science can now speak to them and then now inspire to be something else or aspire to be something in a different field that they may have seen before and been like, oh, that sounds interesting, but I didn't know how that works, or I didn't know that I could actually be that. I've seen someone now that's doing this work. And so there's a lot of factors around, diversity and, inclusion when we talk about representation and we talk about reaching out to the wider community and getting more underrepresented people in these fields. For me, that's an area that I'm truly passionate about because it shaped my life and it shaped my journey. And I see it shaping so many people, especially our youth. And so trying to now be able to share my story and be able to engage in a unique way that people connect with, that to me is the most fulfilling part of being able to do this work now.
I love that, man. My my family lives in Southeast Asia. We live in Vietnam.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm raising a daughter here whose mom is a celebrity. And they've got this whole thing with women. Like they see my daughter and people look at her, oh, she is tall. She's tall
Yeah.
like you. My daughter is so tall.
How
She's like,
tall is she?
she's, I meet her, she's like 146, and she's
Mm,
only 9 years old, man. She's like a teenager height. And
yeah.
people will see her. She's like a 99th percentile in the West. And then Vietnam, she's like this giant. And everyone's like, they see this height and they're just like, "Man, she's so tall. She's so pretty. She needs to be a model." And I was
Mm,
like, or a scientist,
yeah.
or a doctor, or a lawyer. She can be whatever she wants to be. But
Mm,
they constantly try to put her into this little box of she's tall and pretty. Well, you know what? She could be Miss Universe. And I, guys,
mm,
come on. And it was
yeah.
interesting because, and not that there's anything wrong with that
No,
as
not at
well.
all.
I'm not
Mm,
judging that. But when we try to put people in boxes that they have to exist in that box, you start running into problems.
mhm.
Yesterday, the was it Blue Origin sent the first s- s- um,
Yeah,
space
all
tourism
female
capsule,
crew.
all
Yep.
female crew, and online I have been seeing so many trolls hating on that.
Mhm.
But you know what happened in there that was awesome? The first Vietnamese woman astronaut was in that crew, and she went to space. And my daughter last night, we watched October Sky yesterday. And then afterwards, we were looking online, and everyone in Vietnam's been talking about that first Vietnamese woman in space. And my daughter looked at that and she's like me. I could do that. You mean I could be an astronaut too? I said, if you want to, if you
Yeah.
really want to be an astronaut, you could. And she's like, that's awesome. Maybe I could be an astronaut. And right there, that maybe I can be is the door opening to people who don't feel represented, who don't see people like them, in these fields going, I could do that too.
Yep.
You mean I could be a scientist, Dad? You mean I could be something else? And I love that because I feel like science can feel accessible and empowering to everyone if we frame it that way. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I've been feeling the same way because to both of my friends. So I know Amanda and Aisha who are both on that flight. Aisha's a friend of mine, and I know Amanda through some other acquaintances. And so I've been following their journeys for a long time, and both of them are overqualified for their role. They're
Right.
both have a background in aerospace engineers, and so they are true scientists. And like you said, there've been so much backlash from that trip. And I get it, right? Because I always approach things from an empathetic perspective. I know there are a lot of things that are shaping people's beliefs and perspectives right now when it comes to a litany of different things. A lot of it is driven by, the government. There's a lot of things happening right now here in the US that I'm sure you're privy to
Yeah.
of so many things happening. And so there's a wide discourse of things that people are angry about when it comes to classism, when it comes to economics, when it
Yep.
comes to financial stability. I mean, so many different things. Billionaires, what billionaires are doing is supporting or not supporting, and rights that are being taken away, and all these different things that are happening in the world, right? And so I get it. There people are angry about a lot of different things, and so they see something like this on the surface, and they were like, why is this happening? Why are we wasting money, or why are we wasting time? Why is this a distraction? Because they're so focused on all these other problems that we're having. And, I kind of harp it back to, something that we could all relate to, like sports, for example. I'm a big sports guy, love basketball, love football, ran track when I was in high school. And, as I'm passionate about sports, I have my favorite sports teams. And, sports has always been an outlet when we think about things that are happening. Could be a crisis, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be a wide range of other things. We always come back to sports as that unifying body that kind of brings us together. There's the
Yeah.
anthem, and we
Right.
celebrate democracy, and we celebrate our freedom. And a lot of times, sports is that great outlet that brings people together. And we all accept that, right? We all know that, and we all participate in it. And it gives us a relief from things that are going on the day to day. And I look at very much, especially at a trip like this, as very much the same thing, a galvanizing force that should be able to bring us all together. And I think
Yeah.
when we start really looking at science, and especially space exploration and unique missions and things where scientists are really pushing the boundaries of the new frontier, we should look at those things as galvanizing forces that bring us together, because we learn things about ourselves through those missions. People are reshaped, have new perspectives. They get the overview effect of being able to see our planet from a different perspective, and they bring that newfound love and that appreciation of the world back to Earth and to others. When you see people like Aisha and Amanda, they showcase representation of underrepresented people that have always thrived to have success in these fields, that never had that success before. They see one of those two girls and they're like, I can be that. Just like you said with your daughter, I can
Yeah.
do that. I can thrive to be that. Think about how many girls in Vietnam right now are looking at Amanda and they're like, wow, that's actually possible. Where before they'd never seen someone that looked like them going to space, so it was an
Right.
afterthought. They didn't even comprehend in their heads that that's a possibility. And now they see somebody that came from where they came from, have that story, went through all the credibility and accreditation to get to where they're at, went through so many pitfalls and circumstances that helped made them deviate from their path, to now coming full circle and being able to have that dream fulfilled. You see some of this, and that story is motivating. That story is galvanizing. And so I look at a mission like this as a galvanizing force, especially when we're talking about representation in women, young girls, being able to see this whole crew of women celebrating each other, cheering for each
Yeah.
other, supporting each other. That right there alone is significant in being able to uplift a whole community. And so a lot of times I think we need to really look at science from that different perspective of how can this be a galvanizing force? Who is this benefiting? How is this actually reaching people that may have never been reached before? And really kind of look at that in the same kind of lane that we would look at sports and other things that we look at as outlets, and not looking at it as, oh, this is just a joyride, or these are just billionaires just having fun, and this is not making any impact. This is having a wide, far reaching impact on so many people in so many different spaces and so many different outlets that can be game changing, and that can lead people down a new path that's going to reshape our whole entire future for our youth that are coming up, that are going to be coming up with new inventions and new innovation that's going to push us into the new frontier. And so that's kind of how I look at these trips, and especially this most recent mission. And I've been sitting on my phone going back and forth with people, because I've put out posts and celebrating my friends that were a part of that, and some other friends that have done commercial flights as well too, and always celebrating their stories, and then seeing this backlash and this criticism. Really being able to try to educate people on how important this is, and why it's so important, and why it's so critical. And I think the more and more we can communicate that perspective, the more people are going to be enlightened and have a new appreciation for these type of projects.
I think that some in some ways we have gotten so used to technology that the wow factor has gotten removed from a lot of things. I
Yeah.
love that your reference of sports there. Last year, I think it was 2024. There was a game that was being played, and I'm forgetting. I am bad with everyone's names, but I think it was
Yeah.
Saquon Johnson that was running down the field. Is that how you say his name? Saquon?
Was it Saquon Barkley
Saquon Barkley. Forgive me.
with
Yeah.
the,
So
with the
Saquon Barkley.
Philadelphia Eagles?
Saquon Barkley was running down the field. He turned backwards and he did this reverse
Yeah.
hurdle over someone. A- And it was going all over the internet because people were like, how did he do that? How is that even possible? I get up, I trip going down the stairs,
Yeah.
and like this movement that, this guy's coming at him. And I went to school with a guy who was an NFL player. Literally the biggest person I've ever seen. And,
Mhm.
and to have multiple people barreling at you and just be like, boom, you just pop up. Everyone shared that, because at that point, everyone was said, that is amazing. This, this,
Yeah.
this, this, this thing that he did was amazing. People didn't care about teams. People didn't care who he was playing for. You know, what he did was next level amazing. And I think that we have to get some of that wonder back. In October
Mhm.
Sky, everyone's watching Sputnik, travel around the planet.
Yeah.
And they were looking up at the sky going, that's amazing. This has never been done before. Now we have satellites everywhere. We have things in space all the time. And people are like, it's just another satellite. I'm just going to use my phone here.
Yeah.
When I moved to Vietnam in 2001, making a phone call back to the US was a chore. I would go to a public box. It was this big plastic box with a phone that had a line out. And I would
Yeah.
dial the number, and I would see minutes, just $1 a minute, tick, tick, tick. And I was just like, Mom, I love you. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
This is
Real
costing me
quick
a
call.
lot of money. I'm going to do this maybe once a month. This is going to be $100 call if we're on here too long. And it was fast, and people back in the day, when people moved away from Vietnam, they would send cassettes. They would get a cassette, record for a long time, and just tell these stories and mail the cassette. Right now, you and I are having a digital FaceTime call that's being recorded with high definition audio, high definition video across the world. And
Yeah.
we view it as so normal, but we need to stop viewing these things as normal and recognize how extraordinary they are. We
Yeah.
just launched a few people when we were watching Hidden Figures. My daughter and I were looking at some of those Mercury space capsules. They were tiny. They were
Mhm.
a tiny, tiny little thing, and that they're launching into space on top of a giant bomb, this explosive material. And then we figured out how to release the explosion in a way so that we can generate this thrust and send this person into space. Now, we just had a group of people that went up there for fun. Like, the
Yeah.
level of progress that we're dealing with is profound. But yet we are so inundated with the norm, and I mean, I love the internet, but have cat videos really done this to us where everything's just normal now?
Yeah.
And I'm not hating on
Yeah.
cat videos. Cats are adorable, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you, and I think I always kind of touch back on this because one of the big things I always preach is curiosity. I have a phrase that
Yes.
says curiosity is nature's PhD. Never stop asking,
Yeah.
and curiosity is how we learn about everything. Curiosity is what's got me in the position that I'm in right now, being able to touch on a wide variety of STEM topics with my platform because I've been curious. I've asked questions. I've
Yes.
engaged with people, and it's given me this wide range of knowledge that I never would have had before because I've asked questions and I've wanted to know why and I've dug deeper, right? And so curiosity is key. And I think what happens is, especially as we get older, we kids are naturally curious. Like your daughter right now is asking questions and wanting to know how things work and wanting to try new things and explore. But as we get older, we get jaded by life and life situations, right? And
Yeah.
that curiosity gets sucked out of us. We slowly get our curiosity drained out of us because life can be very taxing. You start working, you start facing circumstances, relationships, finances, and all sorts of different things that just compound and compound and compound and really just
Yeah.
kind of squeeze out this curiosity. That's the most natural thing that we have as humans. And so we stop asking questions, we stop wanting to know why, we stop being inquisitive, we just take things at face value. And I think a lot of that has led to this kind of mindset of like, oh, this is normal, this is basic, whatever. This, like you
Right.
mentioned with its launch, like that is an amazing achievement. You just talk about, and 50 years ago, this would never been thought possible. The fact that we have a reusable rocket, oh my God, we can
Yes.
actually take the same rocket back up into space again and use it we can actually make power out of hydrogen and oxygen and only have water as our exhaust. Like what? Like these are
Yeah.
things that would blown people's minds away 50 years ago. The connection you made with just over 20 years ago with having to do long
Yeah.
distance calls, right?
Right.
I mean, this the thing of having landlines. At one point, we all had landlines in our home.
Right.
That's how we made most calls. Now I can be anywhere at any time on my phone, and not only can I make a call on my phone, I can video, I can dial
Yeah.
an app, I can do all sorts of things. I can buy Bitcoin. I can I can do so many ridiculous things that 20 years ago people would have looked at you and been like, "What? That's impossible."
Right.
And these things are come down to us being curious and wanting to know why and asking questions and having the ability to be fragile and have our minds blown. I
Yeah.
think we've been so jaded for so long that that curiosity and that complexity of just how much work it takes to make these things happen, a lot of that has just been sucked out of us. And so it leads us down this
Right.
kind of wormhole of just accepting things and just taking things for granted. And I think that's why I come back to that science literacy and showcasing, platforms like this where we can show the wonders of science and cool research that's happening and cool projects that are being done all across the world that are just changing the face of what we know. The more and more we can bring that to the public forefront, the more we can kind of reignite that curiosity and re-spark that flame so people kind of have that refound love and that connection to science in a way that we've been lost for so long.
I love that. It leads me to the next question, but you know, one of the whys for me for Ilani's little world was to teach kids that you can do more, you can be more. And like if you want to learn about the world, learn about the world. If you want to seek out knowledge, seek out knowledge. If you want to have access to information, like for me, and one of the things people are like, oh, you could do paid this, you could. I was like, man, Ilani's little world will always be free. Like this is
Mhm.
about sharing information with kids. Like I am not putting a paywall up. It's not
Yeah.
happening, man. We will
Mhm.
always have this be free because information is beautiful and information is powerful. And I
Yeah.
want to empower my daughter. And maybe someday she can learn about this and maybe she gets a scholarship to university or something like that. And that's okay for me. But my why is empowering kids the same way I'm trying to empower her. And if we can empower more children to ask questions, to get seek out and to start questioning the universe and like that's what I love. Mark Rober's one of my favorites because he made science cool again.
Yeah.
And we need that. But what's
Mhm.
your why behind hip hop science?
Yeah. Yeah, literally everything that you just mentioned. I'm a big fan of Mark as well too. I just recently did a
Right.
project with him and he's amazing, right? And I grew up on Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse
Right.
Tyson, right? These were the faces that made science fun and entertaining. And so I see those figures, and those figures are people that influenced me, and people that I wanted to be like, and I wanted to emulate the work that they did. And so like for me, my why has always come down to what I thought lacked, which was me not being able to see myself in a lot of these fields and a lot of these circumstances. And I've always had a love for being able to give back and support others, especially our youth. And
Yeah.
I see this all the time in the work that I do with our youth, especially underrepresented youth that are in underserved communities. They're in really dire circumstances. And I do a lot of STEM
Yeah.
outreach work, right? Talking to schools and doing workshops and keynote presentations and whatnot all across the US and internationally as well. And I'll go to some schools that they have a STEM lab, they have a in-depth science curriculum, they have tools, they have a maker space, all these
Yeah.
different resources to get fully engaged, right? Just a plethora of resources. And then conversely, I'll go to a school that's underrepresented, could be a Title I school. They don't even know what a STEM lab is. They don't have any
Right.
computers. They don't have anywhere where they can actually, conduct science experiments or a lab. They're just makeshifting whatever space that they have inside their classroom to try to do whatever it might be on the lesson plan. They don't have access to a robotics team
Yeah.
or field trips where their teachers or school is being able to take them out to get hands-on activities, all these different things. And you just think about that disparity in education and resources for so many students. And I feel so terrible when you think about students that could have that love, could have that curiosity that we talked about, that could be the next future Einsteins, people that are going to
Right.
literally change the face of the world, that get lost in the mix simply because they didn't have the resources, or they weren't spoken to in a way that they felt connected to science, or they felt that
Yeah.
it could be for them. And those are the students that I think about. Those are the people that I think about when I make my content, is how do we now continue to spark that curiosity, that excitement, and showcase representation and provide access to people that may have never thought that this field could have been for them. And so for me, being able to merge the worlds of entertainment and comedy, you think about, everybody has their favorite movie, their favorite song, favorite
Right.
comedian, right? Sports teams, all these different things on a day-to-day basis. So we just kind of like, oh yeah, we love doing that. That's just part of our day-to-day. We are naturally entertained by a lot of these outlets. And for
Yeah.
me, being able to use those as tools to now infuse some scientific knowledge, some scientific literacy within those, that's a way to be able to make an easy connection and be able to showcase like, oh, I didn't ever thought about that. Oh, I didn't know science played a
Yeah.
role in that. Oh, I didn't know science could be involved in this. Or I didn't know that there was a scientific explanation to, like you mentioned with the Saquon Barkley run.
Right.
I have a project that I've done a lot of projects merging sports and science together, and showcasing the wonders of physics and how that actually plays a role in your ability to run or jump and swim and all these different things that you would do in different athletic sports. And when you're able to see that and you're able to know, oh, science plays a role in the day-to-day things of my life, it brings us this newfound connection that I think is really, really important. And so
Right.
for me, that's always been my why, is how do we now showcase that for students? How do we now bring that connection for them in a unique way? And so that's always been my purpose and something that I always love to showcase on my platform.
Man, I love it. We're interested in this because I'm a teacher and I've taught kids for a long time, and we're interested into we're entering into an interesting new period with the rise of AI and with information at people's fingertips in a way that's never been there before. And I see, and people are preaching the doom of AI and this, and I'm watching it. I'm going, you know what? You know what's so interesting? The other day, I had some students, and they were having a hard time with learning some grammar, and so I pulled up AI, and I was like, let's use this tool. Let's use this tool to teach us grammar in a better way and have it quiz us. And then my students were just crushing it in a way that was personalized and really powerful. Ooh, I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, my camera went out. My camera went out for some reason there.
All right. Well, it's all good. I was talking, so the camera was on me, so it won't be a problem. But where do you see education is going to be changing? We got so many new tools. Where do you see STEM and science education heading over the next 10 or 20 years?
Yeah, that's a big loaded question that a lot of us are trying to figure out right now. And you mentioned it right with the onset of AI and AI being so fused now in curriculum and everyday life. AI is definitely going to be a big part of it. There are going to be so many different things that are already changing right now because of AI. And think about it, we all use it as a tool now in everything that
Yeah.
we do. And I'm always on Chat GPT asking questions. It's
Right.
made my workflow so much easier. And
Me
I
too.
look at AI, a lot of people have fears around AI, right? And warranted, like we should always have a healthy fear about anything, right? It's
Yeah.
part of the scientific process. You should having a healthy fear is you doing your proper discord and asking questions and wanting to know why, and you're just questioning things that happen, right? And we should all do that in some aspects. But when we question those things, we should now also seek answers and seek, okay, what is this really impacting? What are the true effects of it? And if you just look back historically, every new wave of innovation or new technology had always had some element of fear around it. When the internet came, there was a healthy level of fear of people thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is going to change everything. People are going to have access to all this information. Oh, newspapers are going to be obsolete and this and that." Like there's so many different things that we were scared of. But think about now, imagine a world with no internet. We can't even fathom
Right.
it right now. That's how much has become part of our day-to-day life, right? But at one point it was thought of as ridiculous. You could look back at cell phones and cell phone technology and all these different things. There was always a fear around any big new change in innovation and technology. What is this going to mean for the future? What is this going to mean for jobs and different people and all sorts of different outlets? And so you got to think about that, and how do we now translate that technology into the benefit of humanity, and not just the ease of things, right? Not just in us being able to search things on the internet better, or being able to draft a proposal or review a
Yeah.
contract in a minute, but now thinking about, okay, how can this tool further now impact things on a greater scale when we talk about climate change and we talk about research work that's going on and collecting data. AI is a valuable tool now, and in order to be able to collect data that can have impacts on all sorts of different things when we're talking about climate change and research and conservation, right? Because now it can give us these tools to be able to assess the environmental impact from different things that are happening in different parts of the world. AI is a technology that we can validly use now to be able to change the landscape for a lot of those things. And so you think about these tools, these technological assets that we have now. How are they advancing the world in other places? How are they now
Yeah.
improving things that would have been so difficult before for us to be able to do ourselves, and not just from the simplicity of us being able to connect with things as humans, but now be able to expand into a bigger horizon. And so that's kind of my mindset when I look at something like AI. And just overall in STEM education in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be completely fused within AI for sure. But I'm also very interested in just kind of seeing other technological advances that now are going to help us in different ways. You just think about social media and science literacy and us being able to connect with scientific discussions in new dynamic ways. I'm interested to see what the social media landscape is going to look like in the next 10 years. Are we still going to have the same platforms that we have now? History tells us no, they're going to change into something else. They're going to evolve into something else. What does that look like? What is that going to be? Are we going to be on holograms and being able to now project ourselves, rather than us talking here virtually? Who knows? Maybe we'll have a hologram figure that we could actually sit in front of and have the dialogue that we're actually in a whole different place. I don't know what that's going to look like, but that unknown is also exciting because any one of us can be a part of that game changing technology. And especially our youth, I like to showcase our youth is that you can be part of that. You love gaming, you love electronics, you love technology. Who knows? You might be the pioneer that changes a whole new field in an area that you didn't even know your skill set could be able to impact. And so that unknown opens the door for so many new possibilities and gives us the ability to be able to be participants in that new change. And I think it's really important for our youth, the next generation, to understand that they're directly involved in that, and they can be those decision makers that are going to help in that evolution of that technology.
I love that. Let me ask you one last question. If you could go back in time and give a younger version of yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I would tell my younger self to do what you love. At the end of the day, if you do what you love and you do what you're passionate about, you'll find success in it no matter what. And a lot of times we make decisions, and I get it too, for financial reasons. We need money. We need to be able to support our family. We need to be able to take care of our siblings or our parents or our dependents, whatever it may be. But foundationally, if you go and you follow what your passion is and what you love, you will ultimately find success. I have a quote that I love as well too from Unknown. So when you find your passion, it becomes your purpose, and you can no longer be passive. And that for me has stood true throughout every phase of life that I've been at. If I follow my passion, I ultimately find that purpose within it. And then there's no doubt. There's no questioning anymore. There's no lack of understanding of, do I belong in this space? And I go back to what I mentioned earlier of wanting to study wildlife biology. Come now full circle after being talked out of it and going a different route and studying engineering and working in the field, and now coming full circle to the work that I do now. A lot of my content kind of skews towards the nature and wildlife, and I love exploring. And I get a chance now to go on research trips all across the world with scientists doing research involved with climate change and different organisms and saving sea turtles and conservation efforts all across the globe in different places, and actually being able to get hands-on in the field doing a lot of this work. And that was what I always wanted to be growing up and
That's
watching
awesome.
National Geographic and Discovery Channel. Like, I wanted to do that. And that got sucked out of me. That got taken away from me because there wasn't any representation in that field. And people doubted my ability to have success in that because nobody looked like me doing that work. And now, full circle, because I've stayed with what I was passionate about and I found purpose in the work that I do, which is uplifting the next generation and being able to showcase to underrepresented youth that you can have success and that science is for you. Being able to now have that purpose has opened up so many doors for me to be able to explore and being able to diversify my STEM skills into different spaces and go back to doing what I love doing, which is exploring and being immersed in nature. And so for me, I would have told my younger self, absolutely follow what you're passionate about and do what you love. It may be difficult. Maybe you might meet other barriers. You might meet people that are going to set you back or tell you no. The more you continue to push forward, you will ultimately find success in that. And my life right now and the things that I'm able to do right now that are bringing me joy are definitely a true testament to that.
I love that, man. Where can people find you? Where can people seek out more information about your content?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on all social media platforms at Hip Hop Science Show is my handle. Instagram is usually where I'm most active, but you'll see my work on YouTube and Threads and TikTok. Also, my website, hiphopscienceshow.com. I have all of my information there as far as upcoming projects, things that I'm working on. For people that want to, bookings for schools and projects and other collaborative ideas, you can reach out to me directly on that platform as well. But Hip Hop Science Show on most platforms, you'll be able to find me, and you'll always recognize me. You either got my lab coat and my headphones and my glasses on. You can't miss the Hip Hop MD on any of those platforms.